And good evening and welcome. I'm John Phillips, and this is Pittsburgh Sports Tonight, live here on X, YouTube, and Facebook. We're going to give folks a couple of moments to kind of straggle in here, hopefully, and check out what we're doing this evening. We are going to be talking about a few different things tonight. I don't know how heavy we will be on the Steelers. I want to talk a little bit about professional wrestling tonight. I had the great pleasure of spending some time with somebody from WWE recently and conducted an interview, and want to make sure that we talk a little bit about that this evening. Also want to talk a little bit about what's going on with Pitt athletics and just the state of college football in general. Tonight at 7:45 p.m., Zig Fracassi, our good friend from SiriusXM's NFL Radio, will join us to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. We'll get his thoughts on the Mike McCarthy hiring and where he's at in terms of coaching and his coaching staff, if you will. We'll probably also discuss some of the other NFL hires that Zig either likes or does not like. I saw an interesting take from Michael Irving today. I guess he was on some sort of podcast talking about the culture of Black America and how they've got to help themselves. I guess this was in reference to, the fact that there were no Black head coaches hired in this past cycle of NFL hiring. 10 openings, the most ever in an off season, and only one minority was hired. That's Robert Saleh, who was the head coach of the Jets for a few years, was fired and let go, went to San Francisco, worked as a defensive coordinator. He's now taking the job in Tennessee. But Bomani Jones, if you watched the show yesterday, Bomani was moaning and blaming, of course, white people again for the problem that Black people aren't being hired. And if you go to our X page, you'll see I retweeted something that Michael Irvin discussed. I wanted to pull it up on X, but I can't for some reason. My frustrations grow with the technology and the fact that I bought a beautiful computer and it just doesn't seem to be doing what I want it to do. But nonetheless, I digress. We are going to talk a little bit about that today. We'll get into that discussion a little bit later on. But I did want to talk a little bit about an interview I did recently. I think if anybody knows me, they know that I love professional wrestling. I grew up watching the sport. I grew up watching it, going to live events at the Civic Arena in the mid 80s. Was kind of smartened up to the business when I started going to matches because my family, I had a cousin that lived in McDonald, Pennsylvania, that was connected to somebody who sold tickets at the Civic Arena at that time. And we started sitting 2 rows back, sometimes ringside, sometimes 2 rows back, sometimes 3 rows back. And I went to a lot of matches in the mid 80s, in 1985, 1986, 1987. And that's where I learned about wrestling tapes and exchanges. And I learned about this was the early days of the dirt sheets. And, I got people started kind of smarting me up to the business because I was interested in a career in broadcasting. And I watched all the wrestling shows that were on. Not only did, you have All American Wrestling, which later morphed into Superstars, when Vince Jr. took over from his dad. You had World Class that was broadcast here in the Pittsburgh area. The NWA's show, the Worldwide Wrestling, was broadcast locally. You had the AWA that was on the air as well. So you had a variety. You had a mix of wrestling that was from the different territories that were you could actually watch here in Pittsburgh. And so, in my time of probably going to, I'd say 8 or 10 different cards between 1985 and 1987, I got a little bit smart to the business because of the people that were, ringside that I met through my cousin. And so I've always had an enjoyment for wrestling. There was a period of time where I thought I might work myself into that line of work, but I did not. But recently I got a chance to sit down with Corey Graves. who, of course, from WWE fame. He is the color commentator on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. Corey is from the Pittsburgh area. His name is Matt Polinsky. He is from Monroeville. He went to Gateway High School. His brother Sam, a little bit younger than him, also, in the professional wrestling business. He's actually, he goes by Sam Adonis. He's in AAA, which is a wrestling league in Mexico. Very popular wrestler down there as an Americano, if you will, which is now, of course, owned by WWE. And a lot of people don't know this, but Corey and I, Matt, if you will, auditioned together at 93.7 The Fan 16 years ago when the station opened up in March of 2010. We did a show together. We both auditioned by hosting a show. He and I did for 4 hours. He was there for about a few months and then left. And I, of course, stuck around for 6 years and enjoyed the pain and abuse of being a part-timer at a station like The Fan. But I had a good time in the majority of the time that I was there. Certainly the people that I worked with on the air, most of them were enjoyable, and there were certainly some good times. But Corey went back to wrestling and eventually became an announcer because he suffered too many concussions and injuries. The concussions are what really derailed his career. And he was able to parlay that into a broadcasting career. They put him on a lot of online shows and then eventually worked his way onto NXT. And then in 2016, he became a member of WWE Raw and as a heel announcer, and just really carved a path for himself. And has, built this incredible following up on social media. He has since remarried. He has 5 children, 2 to his second wife, Leah Van Dale, who was Carmella in WWE for 12 years. Matt lives here in the Pittsburgh area. And he and I kind of reconnected back in May when I saw him at a Riverhounds game. And it was just in passing after the game was over. We chatted for about a minute and a half. He gave me his number. He was like, let's stay in touch. And, from time to time when he was free, I'd hear from him and we would connect a few times and sit down and commiserate about life in general and things he was interested in and he was doing. And, I was writing for the Trib, of course, at the time, and I still am. But, Corey I wanted to write a feature on him. And he was like, I think when the time is right, I'll contact you. And I respected that. Well, a few weeks ago, Corey contacted me and we sat down at a Denny's up in Cranberry and we spent an hour talking, mostly about life and things of the nature. I did record about 20 minutes of the conversation, and it circled around and centered around something that Corey is now doing that is completely different from the world of professional wrestling. And he is now teaching a communications class called Live Sports Production at Point Park University. And so, when he called me, it was right before the new year, and he said, hey, I'd like to meet you next week, and I got something that I want to explain to you. And so we met the first week of the new year. I was making a trip to South Bend, Indiana, and Cincinnati for work. I thought, hey, this is perfect. Let's go up and meet here. He offered to meet me in Denny's at Cranberry, and we sat down for over an hour and we just kind of talked, and he laid everything out to me. He's like, I'm going to be a college professor. I'm going to teach this class. And he went into this whole thing. And so long story short, once the class started, I wanted to give him a little bit of time to, get to speak to those kids that were in the class. And last week I actually went down to Point Park. Dr. Robert Anke, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. Bernie Anke, I should say, Dr. Bernie Anke, who's the chair at Point Park's School of Communications. I got a chance to sit in on Corey's class and, shot a little video, took some pictures, but just kind of watched. And put an article together for the Tribune Review today. So if you have a chance, you can go to our my X page at Steel City Sunday and check out the article there on Corey Graves. I am going to release an unedited version of our conversation regarding that. It's about 17 minutes. I have it uploaded to YouTube, but it's going to drop on Friday. I think people will find it interesting. It'll give you a little bit of a look behind the curtain of pro wrestling as well. So, Corey is, he's a great guy. And I am very pleased to, have kind of, reconnected with him after many, many years. But that dropped online today for the Trib. And I anticipate that being in the Times Express tomorrow, which is the Monroeville newspaper that the Trib has. And by Thursday, I think it's going to hit the main newspaper. At least I hope it does, because Corey deserves something like that. He's got over 1.3 million followers on his different social media pages. He is, easily the most successful broadcaster to go into the wrestling business that's from around Pittsburgh. And you're only talking about a handful of people, right? You're talking about Mark Madden. You can talk about Bill Cardill in the early days of studio wrestling. But it's he and it's Mark Madden, it's Corey Graves, and, Jack Corpella, who is in his own right blowing it up on YouTube and Facebook with his cycledrag.com website, where he, covers all kinds of things related to motorcycles, street racing, motocross, sometimes anything that's bike or car related. Jack Corpella, who also worked at the Fan, was a year ahead of Corey at Gateway. He graduated a year prior to Corey graduating. Jack spent 5 years working for WWE between 2005 and 2010. So, you've got Corey Graves, Mark Madden, and Jack Corpella. And that's it. That's the Mount Rushmore, and Bill Cardill, if you will. And I put a 1,200 word story together, and the Trib got it published online today. I'm very proud of the work that went into that. My editor, Bill Hartlip, is he's been in the business of news and print for 25, almost 30 years. He was, touched up the story. I'm not thorough by any stretch of the imagination, but I do my best, and I try to write with some passion. And that story was very important to me. I think hopefully I did him justice, and I hope he enjoys the story. I know he's kind of put it out on some of his social media platforms as well, but I hope you get a chance to take a look at that. It's nice to be able to write about those sorts of things. I try to find subject matter that is interesting to me, and waiting for, of course, the Riverhound season to start. I've had a chance to kind of cover their practices a little bit already. And, they had an exhibition game yesterday over at their location in Montour at AHN. Hello, Ralph. Good to see you this evening. Thanks for checking in on our YouTube channel. It's nice to be able to have that outlet again, to be able to write some features. Excited to cover the Riverhounds again this year for the Trib. They have told me that I'm coming back. I know that there's a lot of good writers that are going to be looking for work here real soon. But according to the sources at the Trib, I'm coming back to cover the Riverhounds for year 2, which is nice. And I'm excited about that. I'm actually going to make the trip down to Charleston, South Carolina, where I lived for 4+ years, and cover their home opener on March 7th. That's a Saturday. So I'll be down there covering that game. It's the Riverhounds' oldest rival. It's their oldest rival. They go back 27 years now playing the Charleston Battery, and that's where the Riverhounds are going to open up. Their first home game won't be until March 28th, 3 weeks later, so they'll be on the road to start the season, and that's okay. We're still kind of in the winter months up here, and, as by the time we get to April and May, the weather breaks, hopefully, and, there'll be nice crowds at the stadium, which will start undergoing some of the construction work this year. I don't know what the plan is just yet. I think that's something I want to kind of talk to them about and get a little update on where stadium plans are right now. Obviously, the Riverhounds made that big statement sometime in October last year that they're going to build a $150 million, 16,000 seat stadium. It's going to be beautiful. And we're us as press members, I will tell you, the press box needs some updating. If it can look something like the Philadelphia Union Stadium, I think we would all be pretty happy. But whatever they end up doing, I'm excited. I'm excited to see, obviously the sketches and what they were showing you at that press conference back in October was exciting, to say the very least. It might have been early November now that my memory is shaken, but nonetheless, when they made that announcement and they had everybody down there, it's nice to know that they've got that on the back burner over the next 3 years. And I think that process is going to begin here shortly. I have not been down to Highmark since the Eastern Conference final game in mid-November. So that was the last time I was down there. And I should probably check with Matt Grubba, who used to write for the Trib, but is now their media relations director, and see where things are at in the stages of getting prepared to start turning Highmark Stadium into its newer version. We'll also see what kind of stadium rights, naming rights they get for the Riverhounds. But wanted to start the show off with that this evening. I didn't necessarily want to get into any Steelers stuff per se. I don't think there's much to be said right now regarding the Steelers. Again, go check out the article on our X page on Corey Graves, and Friday at noon on our YouTube channel. I'm going to drop the 17-minute unedited version of the conversation, part of the conversation that he and I had. We talked about a lot of other things wrestling related that I didn't want to record. I just wanted to kind of spend time with him and chat with him. He's really a good guy. For considering how successful he is, Corey is a very down to earth guy, and it was nice to spend time with him to talk a little bit about this new phase of his life, his professional career outside of wrestling, which is pretty neat. Okay, so if you have any questions or some comments, you want to drop them in the comment section, you are welcome to do so. We'll be on the air until about 8 p.m. this evening. We will have a show tomorrow, nothing on Thursday. We'll go to 4 nights next week. We will have Zig Fracassi on the show tonight. Zig, of course, of SiriusXM's NFL Radio. We'll talk a little bit about the Super Bowl coming up. Not a whole lot of hype around a lot of it right now. Bad Bunny is getting some mixed reviews after the Grammys. He is going to be performing at halftime. I know Green Day is going to be performing, I believe, in the pregame. Look, I don't know if anybody will ever top Prince's performance at Super Bowl 41. Rolling Stones had a pretty good one. There were some others, obviously Whitney Houston singing the Star Spangled Banner will never be beaten. But I'm not necessarily looking forward to watching the halftime show. I'm pretty sure I'll probably do something else during that time frame. I'm sure there's plenty of halftime programming that the networks that aren't carrying the Super Bowl, and it's going to be on NBC this year for those of us that stream online. I guess we have to use our Peacock subscription to get the game itself because Fubo and I think YouTube TV are still having some issues with NBC Cox here in Pittsburgh, which is WPXI TV. So if you're on those streaming services, you're going to need to have your Peacock subscription to watch the big game. Thought about actually streaming it, but I'm not going to do that. Not nearly enough of subscribers right now to get involved in all of that. But nonetheless, I digress into some other topics. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the state of college athletics. Pitt basketball competing tonight in Virginia. That game's at 9:00. The Who's are 18-3. Pitt comes in at 9-13. They have struggled all season long. Look, I think we've talked a little bit about Jeff Capel. And when he came here, when Jamie Dixon's era came to an end, it's kind of like the Mike Tomlin era, if you think about it, right? Dixon was a victim of his own success or lack thereof. Jamie had competitive programs. They went to the NCAA tournament on a regular basis. They won the Big East a few times under him, right? They competed in some of the greatest Big East finals in the last 25 years. There were some Donniebrooks in there against Boston College and Connecticut that they played, some that they won, some that they lost. But nonetheless, Jamie always had competitive teams. He had talent, and they were highly ranked. And, they even had a number 1 seed in 2011, I believe it was. But they disappointed routinely. They disappointed routinely, most notably in 2008 when they lost the regional final to Villanova, who later went on to win the national championship that year. But the 2011 team that went number 1 and lost in the second round was definitely a hard pill to swallow. And as Dixon, continued on as head coach, and they went into the Big East. They left the Big East, I should say, and then moved on into the ACC. The successes were a little bit less and less. The competition changed, right? You weren't playing Georgetown. You weren't playing Villanova. You weren't playing the old teams, St. John's, like you had in the past. You were getting Duke and North Carolina to play. You were getting NC State and Wake Forest. You were getting Georgia Tech. You were getting teams that, played a competitive schedule in the Big East. You got Boston College, right, who had left at some point in time to go to the ACC, Miami of Florida. Their program is much better now than it was when Pitt first joined. But you had these juggernauts, these dynastic teams that you had to compete with. And at some point in time, it became too much. And, Pitt wanted change, and they got it. Jamie Dixon left, went back to Texas Christian. And, Pitt was able to hire Jeff Capel. And so Capel comes in, obviously, with a pedigree from Duke, very successful, was an assistant under Coach K, and takes over the program. And, I don't know what it was, because this is before NIL a few years ago. For whatever reason, the recruiting didn't happen the way people thought it would, right? Pitt had some success, but ultimately they were a little bit disappointing. And now what you've seen over the last few years with NIL is that, the Peterson Event Center, which was a great recruiting tool when it was built, I think it was 2000 or 2001, what was once a great recruiting tool for you, doesn't have the shine that it does 25 years later, because the Joneses keep up by either upgrading or building something new. And Pitt's not a basketball program, even though they've got some tradition, right? Eastern 8, right? Sam Mannery and, Charles Smith and Jerome Lane, those teams in the 80s and, early 90s that competed, into the mid-late 90s in the Big East that were tough. Obviously, Sean Miller played in that era of the mid-late 80s as well. But, you had a period of time where, Pitt basketball just kind of came along as it did. Nothing really spectacular, competitive in the Big East, but, they weren't really competing to the level that they needed to until Jamie Dixon was able, Kevin Stallings was in there for a period of time, but, once Jamie kind of took over the program, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name who went to UCLA that was in there that kind of helped rebuild the program. His name is escaping me right now, but you had this change in the program that was helped by the new building. And so you had this kind of rebirth of Pitt basketball that, showed up in Big East tournaments and was competitive. He needs to be fired, according to Ralph Williams. Ralph, he's got, I think, 4 years left on his buyout, and I think that that's something Alan Green is probably going to be taking a look at. And we'll see how that plays out here shortly once this season is over. But anyhow, going back to, the basketball program, you had Jamie Dixon, probably take it to its heights, its most success, I would think, is certainly in terms of, wins and things of that nature. But the truth of the matter is that the program has fallen on some hard times. Okay. It has fallen on some hard times. And right now, there needs to be some sort of change at some point in time. I don't know if Jeff Capel can survive this year. I don't know if he can. They have looked terrible. If you look at their schedule, right, they have losses. They have a loss to Hofstra. They lost to Central Florida on the road. They lost to Quinnipiac at home. They lost to both Hofstra and Quinnipiac at the Peterson Event Center this year. You can't even tell me that that's even remotely acceptable. Quinnipiac, Hofstra, beating Pitt men's basketball at home in 2026. Ben Howland is the name of the coach that preceded Jamie Dixon. So now you've got Alan Green, who is relatively new still. I think he's still under 2 years on the job at Pitt as the new AD. And Alan Green, like any athletic director, the first priority for athletic directors is raising money. Okay, it's not like 40, 50 years ago. It's really about raising money more so than anything than ever before. But you also want to make your mark as an AD, and the way you do that in the public's mind, and also with potential alumni who have a lot of money, and Pitt certainly has a lot of alumni that have a lot of money, is you have to make coaching hires. And right now at Pitt, Jeff Capel is in the hot seat. He's in the hot seat. He's got the crosshairs on him, right? And right now, he's the guy that is that's taking a lot of heat. He's taking a lot of heat, and rightfully so. This basketball program is not where it needs to be. It's not where it needs to be. I can't see how he's going to survive this year. We saw Pat Narduzzi make it through, but I think Pat's got like a 6 or 7 years left on his contract. And the football coach makes more money than the basketball coach, obviously. And again, I'm not trying to knock Narduzzi, but look, he's second time in wins all time as head coach at Pitt. He's been there 11 seasons now, but he has not delivered. He had the ACC championship a few years ago. But losing to East Carolina in a bowl game does not endear you to your alumni base, right? And I don't want to differ away from the conversation we're trying to have regarding Jeff Capel, but the fact of the matter is, he's on the hot seat, and they're going into Charlottesville tonight, and they're going to play a team that will grind you up. Virginia plays a very tough, hard-nosed game. They grind you down. They play tough defense. They stick with what they know. They don't change and deviate. They recruit who they do. And they are fairly consistently in contention for ACC championships and, of course, berths into the NCAA tournament. Consistently. And you have to respect that because, look, they're 18th in the country right now, and they've established a program up down there that it plays a certain style of basketball that has been effective for them, right? And I don't think their NIL money is all that great, so they're not spending a ton of money on kids. Alan Green has to come to some sort of decision here at some point in time on what he wants to do with Pitt basketball. Is Jeff Capel somebody that is going to get tossed by the end of the season? You're welcome to leave some comments if you do. I don't know how you keep a guy who lost to Quinnipiac and Bucknell at home in a major program like Pitt's. I don't know how you do it, right? How do you keep, or I'm sorry, Hofstra and Quinnipiac? They beat Bucknell fairly easily. Hofstra and Quinnipiac. How do you lose those games at home? How are you, Jeff Capel, looking in the mirror at yourself after the losses of that nature? How do you walk into the building the next day? How do you stare down alumni that want to donate money to the program but are afraid to because of the product that's being put out? Right? Pitt has already announced that this coming football season, they're going to tarp the upper portions of Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium. They're going to cut capacity down at Acrisure to under 50K because they can't draw flies down there. I took a lot of heat in 2011 or 12. It was 2011, I believe it was. Might have been 2012. When Pitt decided, and again, this was Steve Peterson. I never had a good relationship with Steve Peterson in both of his tenures at the University of Pittsburgh as athletic director. In 1997 and 1998, when I was working on Ardmore Boulevard doing evenings, when Pitt was still on AM 1250, it was the last year. They decided to go to KQV in 1998. I was very vocal, obviously, on the AM station at that time, doing evenings from 6 to 10 about all of this. I got accused by Peterson of being jealous and, them moving on. And that didn't last very long, obviously. They spent a little time, I think, over on at AM 1410 KQV. And then I think by 2001, they went over to Clear Channel for a while before they eventually landed on the Fan. And when I was over there, this was the second time around for Steve Peterson. And by the way, in 1998, I said that Peterson would leave to go to Nebraska, and he denied that profusely. Of course, he eventually jumped to go to Lincoln immediately as soon as there was opportunity, and he destroyed that program by, getting rid of the head football coach at that time. He brought in Bill Callahan. It was an absolute disaster. He destroyed, Nebraska football, and then eventually got fired, and then came sulking back to Pitt, who hired him back. I think it was in 2009 and 2010. He starts to get his hooks into things, obviously, and, raising money. And look, Steve raised a lot of money for Pitt. Okay. I've always gave him his flowers for that. He raised a ton of money for Pitt. He helped get the Peterson Event Center built, right? They raised Pitt Stadium. They got in bed with the Steelers over at the new stadium. It was good for Pitt at that time, but even in this time frame, I've always maintained that Pitt needs to have a stadium on campus, 45,000, something similar to the one they have at Wake Forest, something similar to the stadiums that they have at Georgia Tech. You find yourself a spot somewhere down there. I always felt that they could put a small stadium right there underneath the Cathedral of Learning. I believe they have enough space and infrastructure to make that happen, but they're not going to do that. Yeah, he fired Frank Solich, who had he had fired Frank Solich from Nebraska, and I remember when Dave was head coach at Pitt. He came back. It was like 2009 or 2010. And I actually ran into it. Thanks, Ralph. I appreciate that. I remember running into Dave Wannstedt at Woodland Hills High School doing a recruiting trip with George Novak one day. But yeah, that whole thing that went down with, getting rid of Wannstedt, and then they hired Mike Haywood from Miami of Ohio. And that lasted a couple weeks because on January 1st of 2011, again, just going back, I was at the Fan at the time, and I was doing the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift on the night of the Winter Classic. I'll never forget this. Thanks for reminding me of this, Ralph. I'm at the Fan this is January 1st of 2011. The Winter Classic is being played at Heinz Field at the time, right? The Washington Capitals came in, they beat the Penguins 3-1. I was doing the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift, and I was under strict orders to talk hockey for 4 hours. Not my best subject in the world, but I was prepared to do it, right? And so Pitt announces right around the start of the hockey game, or somewhere either right before or just before it ended, that they had fired Mike Haywood because there were allegations of abuse and assault. And this all happened right as the hockey game was about to come to an end. And I'll never forget Terry Fox, who was the program director of the station at that time. Terry calls me on my cell phone, and he made it really clear. He goes, I don't care what we talked about prior to what just happened. You are going to speak for the next 4 hours about Pitt football. And he specifically said to me, don't be afraid to be opinionated. And because I told him, he knew I did not have a good relationship with Steve Peterson. And for 4 hours, I called for Peterson's firing. For 4 hours straight, I explicitly called out. I'm trying to remember who the president of the university was at that time. I looked up all the names of all the important people, the chancellor, the deans, anybody that was important above Peterson. For 4 hours, I spoke how he should have been fired immediately, that he pushed Wannstedt out the moment he could, right? He fires Dave Wannstedt, right? And I said this when they fired Wannstedt. I talked about the Frank Solich firing, obviously, and bringing in Bill Callahan, and what a disaster that was, and how it set Nebraska football back. Same thing here. They hire this absolute unknown guy, and within weeks, they had to fire him because they didn't do their due diligence, because Peterson didn't do his job, right? He didn't do his job. He hired Walt Harris as well. And I know Walt took over a Pitt program in the mid-90s that was so bad, right? They were terrible. The cupboard was completely bare at that point in time, and he was able to take over. He was able to take over a program that was just awful, right? And he was able to get Pete Gonzalez somehow. They beat West Virginia. They got to 6-6. They went to a bowl game. I think they played in the Liberty Bowl in '97, and they got beat by Southern Miss like 41-7, right? He took over for Johnny Majors, right? Johnny Majors came back for his second run at Pitt and just obliterated that program. Mark Nortenberg. Thank you, Ralph. Yeah. So you're right. So there was that timeline where you had Steve Peterson, who came in. He brought Walt Harrison, and Walt didn't leave on the greatest of storylines either. Okay, of which I will not get into. So the truth of the matter is that Steve Peterson had this horrific, right, resume of hires at Pitt and at Nebraska, and especially when he had went to Nebraska, and I mean, you're talking about an institutional program, national championships, and whatnot. He comes back to Pitt second time around, and you could just feel that he wanted to get rid of Dave Wannstedt, which he did. He absolutely terminates him, and they hire this guy, Mike Haywood. The next thing you know, boom, he hires this unknown guy, and then 3 weeks later, he's firing him. Anyhow, I went on the air for 4 hours straight, and just I couldn't understand how he had a job. Like I expected the university to fire him at 2 a.m. And I was calling for it all night long. And anytime I was able to get back on the air over the next few weeks, he of course hires Todd Graham, who ran out of here after 1 year. And then Paul Chryst came in for 3 years. And then he left to go back to Wisconsin to take over the head coaching job there. It was just, it was a disaster. And, and Graham Peterson tried to get me fired in 2012 when he decided he wanted the spring game, because nobody was going to the spring game again at Heinz Field at the time. He decided he wanted to take it to the high school stadiums. And I researched it. All the Division I programs all conducted their spring games at their football stadiums, even the small, the P5s. I called Eastern Michigan. I called the smallest schools that you could possibly think of. And I researched it, and I wrote a big article for CBS Online. And basically, it was like an embarrassment. I was like, if I'm Pitt, I've got to be humiliated that I'm taking my spring game and playing it at Aliquippa High School. And Peterson called the guy who ran CBS Radio. They got me suspended. They wanted to fire me, but Terry Fox stood up for me. So anyhow, that's a long rant about Pitt athletics. We'll see what happens with Capel. I think he'll probably survive one more year. I think it's 60-40, but we'll see. This was the other story I wanted to get to a little bit later on here in the show before we get Zig Fracassi on. Craig is checking in via our YouTube channel tonight. The Detroit fan has filed a $100 million lawsuit against DK Metcalf, the Steelers, the league. Since he's filing it against Ocho Cinco and Sterling Sharp, since he says he's been labeled as a racist. I did see that, Craig. Thank you very much for pointing that out. I think we knew as that story developed, and of course that was the Lions-Steelers game when the Steelers went up to Detroit and beat them, and that wrapped up that 3-game winning streak that they had before the loss to Buffalo, I believe it was. But it was right before the end of the season. Right before the end of the season. And so, yeah, they went to Detroit and they won, and that all went down. Metcalf, of course, takes a swing at the guy, grabs him, whatever you want. He shouldn't have put his hands on him. Gets the 2-game suspension, and we kind of knew within moments or within hours of that incident that guy had done something like this before, and to DK Metcalf. That's the one thing about the internet. It does not forget, and it is forever. And I'll remember that night, people were like, oh, yeah, I think I remember that guy. I think I remember him doing something like that, similar. And, oh, yeah, he goes to high school football games, and he does that there. And, oh, yeah, we've seen him do this as well elsewhere. And so, the funny thing is that it does come out later today that he has filed a $100 million lawsuit against the league and a bunch of different people. We kind of figured that, that he was probably going to do this. And sure enough, that has happened. All right. A man who will not be charged in this lawsuit is going to be joining us here in just a few moments. He is live in from his palatial digs. Have you been named in the lawsuit by the crazy Detroit fans, Zig? Have you checked with your attorneys that you have on retainer?
Vinny Boombat. Oh, that's Rodney Dangerfield's doctor. No, I'm good, JP. No lawsuits here. I'm on the up and up, my friend.
I thought you worked with the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Not quite. How you doing, my man?
Only old heads like us would know that reference. I'm doing good. Zig Fracassi, of course, of Sirius XM's NFL Radio, joining us. Zig not going to the Super Bowl this year. I saw that they have certain events in San Francisco and certain events in it's Santa Clara, I believe. Yeah, San Jose at the stadium. It's like an hour and 40-minute drive. I know that's a nightmare for anybody, whether you're a media or fan or a player. You have colleagues that are out there. What are they saying so far about the setup?
Oh, it's just, obviously they took part in the, media night last night where that's actually open to the fans. That's something they've had the last few years. And then obviously sending things over to San Francisco and the media center there. And, it's just one of those things where you grab all these interviews and these players probably have products to sell or whatever the case may be. And it's just, you know how that goes. And again, it just seems to be a good vibe going into this game, obviously with Super Bowl 60 around, and just it was just interesting to hear a few of the different things.
I think it's been real quiet so far, Zig. It's been a real quiet start to the Super Bowl week. Am I wrong? Am I not paying attention?
I just from an outside looking in, JP, maybe that's the case. I know the Mad Dog Christopher Russo was talking a little bit about that today on his show.
Okay.
Maybe it's again, maybe it's just one of these things where the matchup itself is going to be very good, but unlike the last couple of years, we don't have like the Chiefs, for example, last year looking for the three-peat,
Yeah,
or the
okay.
year before for the repeat.
The
So,
sexy storyline is certainly lacking a little here.
well, and also remember too, JP, with the Chiefs, you've got the Swifties angle, since Taylor Swift's obviously. Well, no, I mean, I think that's
It's
that when you're
no,
trying to
not
get the
fair.
French fan. No, it's that thing,
Yeah.
you
No,
know.
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Although I would think that there would be enough being made about the Patriots going for a seventh Super Bowl under a
True.
third head coach, right? You know what I mean? I feel like the buzz around this game is just not there right now, and it doesn't lack for stars, but it doesn't have the marquee names. I mean, look, Sam Darnold isn't. He's not on a
Joe
Hollywood
Montana
marquee.
or Tom
Right,
Brady,
right,
right?
or Tom Brady, right? Yeah, you just, and even New England. I mean, it's really, I mean, yeah. Look, the Darnold story is interesting, obviously, and look, Drake May, in his second year coming of age, if you will, is an interesting story. But there's really no marquee names to talk about. I mean, and like you said, it's not a repeat or a three-peat. You've got the angle of the Patriots. Outside of that, I don't know what the buzz is right now. It's just my 2 cents on it all. Is where I stand
No,
with things, Sig.
no, and you're not wrong. And again, just to reiterate, the game itself may turn out to be a classic for all we know.
Right?
And and especially the last time these teams met 11 years ago, the infamous second and dumb play, with the interception at the
Okay.
yeah, the Malcolm Butler became a folk hero, even though Seattle was running the ball at will, and if they run beast mode in, they're probably the champion, and they're repeat champions then. But you're right. I mean, there's just not the brand names. I mean, if you look at the rosters, you know the league. I know the league. Stephon Diggs, Christian Gonzalez. I mean, these are wonderful players. Kenneth Walker III, DeMarcus Lawrence, but you got to know the league or really follow those teams, JP. There's not the future Hall of Famer coming out of this, so maybe that's why the buzz is a little bit lacking right now.
Okay, we've got Sig Fracassi of SiriusXM's NFL Radio on with us right now. We'll have him for just a few more minutes. He was kind enough to give us a little bit of time. This Detroit Lions fan, yeah, no, I appreciate it. The Detroit Lions fan files a $100 million lawsuit today against DK Metcalf. I believe they also named Chad Ochocinco Johnson. Shay Media, All Time Sports LLC is defendants. The Steelers are in there. I believe the DK Metcalf is in there, seeking $100 million. I'm sure that this will be quietly settled out of court, but
I
didn't see that one
this
coming.
One goes a little too far, and then if memory serves me right, JP, I think DK Metcalf, when he was with Seattle, I think complained about this same fan when they played in Detroit before. So I don't know what the end game is, to be honest with you, with this guy. So hopefully this thing gets attended to and maybe reacted to and dismissed like it should.
It's early in the week. I don't want to jump back into the Super Bowl thing here. If you got a feel for Sunday, how do you think it's going to play out, Zig?
Well, Seattle's the favorite. And so you automatically you're thinking, well, what did they do to rate the edge? I think they played probably a lot of it, JP, is because they played, I think, tougher competition. I mean, they had to get by San Francisco and the LA Rams in their own division.
Yeah.
So they earned what they got to get to the Super Bowl. I think they played a better overall schedule. I think if you look at it, Darnold did have a very, very good year. Jackson Smith and Jigma might be the best receiver in the NFL nobody's ever heard of because all he ever does is get open. And that may be part of it too, JP, because even though you get national games per se, Seattle is still one of those franchises. They aren't a Steelers, a Packers, a Cowboys, the cachet type of franchises. So I think if Seattle is able to keep using their medium pass game, that's where I think they have a bit of an edge. Although I don't like the fact Charbonnet is out. So does that put a little pressure, extra pressure on Kenneth Walker III? Defensively, they got to shore up the run a little bit because what my co-host from this past weekend, Super Bowl champ Robert Turbin, former Seahawks back, was telling me, the Rams started to run at Seattle's right side on that D-line, or if you're watching on TV, the left, and they were having big success. If they can close that and maintain, New England with Ramondre Stevenson and Trevion Henderson limiting their abilities to break off big plays, that's where I think it works out good for Seattle.
I will say this, and you're right about the schedule that Seattle faced, obviously, in the conference championship game against the Rams, and then, of course, against San Francisco. New England didn't have an easy path either. I mean, they were at home. They were at home, obviously, for the divisional game against Houston, and the Texans brought in arguably the best defense or the second best defense statistically at that time. And then to go on the road in the conditions that they were in and facing a pretty good Denver team. Look, I understand why the line is where it is. I thought that the line was a little high myself. I think there's value in the Pats plus 4.5. I really do. I mean, not that I've ever wagered a chocolate chip cookie or 3 on games of this nature, but I'm just saying, if I was in Las Vegas, I might be trying to sell the kids and mortgage the house 3 times over to get it on plus 4.5. It's pretty easy to get a bet down in just about any state these days. I think the line's a little high myself. I really see this being a 3 or 4 point game.
Yeah, and don't forget too, JP, they started the playoffs by beating the Chargers. So they're
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, they had the wild card game against the Chargers, which, by the way, they wound up beating 3 of the top 5 regular season defenses. So that was one of the narratives too going around. Well, who did the Patriots play all year? Well, yeah, they beat Buffalo on that Sunday night game. And yeah, maybe their schedule wasn't the strongest, but I think they more than made up for it in terms of who they beat in the playoffs, those 3 top 5 defenses going forward. But yeah, maybe New England's being a little short-shrifted, but I'm concerned. And again, Drake May showed that apparently his shoulder's fine, but JP, only he knows if that's really the case. So maybe that's where I think some of the line makers hedge that a little bit because of his status. He wasn't feeling good last week either. So, maybe something to keep an eye on as the rest of the week goes along.
Before I let you go, I want to get your thoughts on the Mike McCarthy hiring here in Pittsburgh. What'd you think of that?
Boy, how about him, huh? Maybe the only guy ever to coach probably the 3 biggest brands in the NFL. Yes.
Right.
Packers, Cowboys, Steelers. I got to be honest, JP, I'm not sure if it's a upgrade. Where I view this as is this, and maybe you can agree or disagree with me, where if they went, say, Minter or the kid from the Rams, who I think is going to be a head coach one day, Nate Scheelhaus, that would have told me the Steelers are going for a rebuild. But with McCarthy, they're going for we think we have a good enough roster to win now. We think we can get Aaron back the way they're constituted. they think they could still win now. Hence, McCarthy got the job. So maybe they wanted to keep things in the veteran, let's win now mode.
Yeah, my cat had an opinion on it, but I told him he has to put an application in to be part of the crew here. Zig Fracassi of SiriusXM's NFL Radio, of course, was with us all season long on Steel City Sunday. Zig, I can't thank you enough for giving me a few minutes of your time, my friend.
Oh, and I enjoyed that. And by the way, marks to you for getting that off the ground. We talked about it over the summer at our reunion. Yeah. And I said, you know what? Stay at this. It's going to take off. You and all the crew. It was an honor for me to be part of it.
Awesome. We'll have you back next year. I appreciate your time, Zig. You're the best.
All right, buddy. Be good.
All right. Zig Fracassi, he and I go back 30 plus years now. I was 32 years, actually. Be 32 years somewhere towards the end of the year, where I worked with Zig Fracassi in Las Vegas, Nevada. I was all of 25 years old, literally just turned 25 when I moved out there. Hey, JP, let's go to El Pollo Loco. We used to go to the Crazy Chicken and all kinds of places. He's a good guy, Zig Fracassi, and one of the more detailed guys I've ever worked with. I mean, his depth of knowledge of the sport of football and all other sports. He's a hockey guy. He's a big rabid hockey guy as well. I love Zig, and I'm so happy to be able to work with him, as I've been happy to work again with people like Paul Zeiss and John Fedko and some others. All right, that's going to wrap up our show this evening. Look how quickly an hour goes. I don't need commercial breaks. I can entertain and talk. Got people like you. We got Ralph Williams. We got Craig Wordlow checking in via our YouTube channel. I appreciate all of you checking us out on X and whatnot. A nice little crowd, about almost 40 of you this evening. Hey, we're going to build this. I'm going to build this over time. We're going to get more guests. We're going to increase things as we get towards the spring. Once we get to baseball season, I hope to have some cool announcements in terms of programming. So we'll see how the next few months play out. All right. Thanks to everybody who participated in tonight's broadcast. We'll be back again tomorrow night. I'll have some guests. Check out our X page for the updates on that tomorrow. Appreciate all your comments, and for you checking us out this evening. I'm John Phillips. Good evening. You have been watching Pittsburgh Sports Tonight here on X, YouTube, and Facebook. Good evening, everybody.